Hello everyone and welcome to the DM's Book Club, a podcast where we talk about some Dungeons & Dragons and how we might discuss it in our role-playing campaigns. My name is Fiona and with me is my co-host, the person that does all the cool graphics and everything. It's Hamilton. Hello Hamilton, how are you?
I'm fine. How are you, Fiona?
I'm doing better because it is the spooky season. Finally, we're here.
Spooky season, yes.
We're here. We've made it. We've made it to the end of October from the past.
And I didn't have time to put makeup on, unfortunately.
No,
for it.
I know. Me neither. You might recognise these outfits from a couple of weeks ago, but we thought, what better time to start talking about
I can quickly change.
Oh no! Oh, there you go. Done. It's all good. But what better time to sort of talk about spooky settings than obviously on Halloween itself? But obviously, I talk about it 365 days a year anyway. So, but hey, it sounds good.
Yeah.
But Hamilton, I guess we'll dive right in. What is our topic today? What is the spooky, spectacular theme that you brought to us?
Well, yeah. So this is a bit of old school D&D, and not that old school. It's 3E, 3rd edition. It's the Ghostwalk campaign and the city, particularly the city of Manifest. Manifest. I think it's Manifest. I don't know why I said it weirdly. It's what happens when you're live on camera. You just can't speak. It's. I found this by chance, really, looking through DM's Guild and some old. I was talking to people about old campaign guides and politics, actually, and campaigns. And someone mentioned Birthright, and I was like, I looked at that and I was like, I'm not too keen on this. That doesn't look that interesting. And then at the bottom it said, if you're interested in this, you might also be interested in. So it was literally one of those like loop-de-loops, and I ended up round the roller coaster at Ghostwalk. So this is an official campaign guide written by very famous writers Monte Cook and Sean K. Reynolds, so of Monte Cook Games. So this is when they used to work for imagine it was Wizards at the time. I can't remember.
Yeah, Wizards at the time.
Yeah. And the basic premise is once you die, that is not the end of the story. You live on as a ghost, and ghosts are a physical manifestation. Hence the city of Manifest. And there's a whole rule set around that. And that's basically the premise that we'll be talking about, how you maybe can bring the city of Manifest and this sort of rule set, or this sort of idea, into your campaigns. Yeah.
It's very, when you sort of sent this to me, I was like, ooh, what if you came back and you could continue on your playable character that you've developed and you've obviously had a connection to, and instead of them dying, you can still finish the story, which I think is really interesting. And the one thing I want to point out right at the beginning was that there's a lot in this book. Obviously, there's stuff about player options, magic items, the world itself, extra bits, and adventure. So again, it's similar to when we did our Farewell Companion piece. Lots of stuff in there. One thing I picked out from it though, its description of the ghosts as well. It says it is as you died. You still have clothes on, but if you died of natural causes, then you look a little bit younger and stuff. But if you died of violent death, that is still apparent.
Yeah.
Like you'll have like an arm off, or your jaw will be dislodged or something like that. And it talked about scaring children, and you can give them nightmares because that's how you died. And I was just like, I hadn't even considered that, because obviously in my head it's like, when people come back,
just this apparition that is their best self sort of thing. But this is more nearly headless Nick, isn't it, than it is...
Yes, exactly that. Yeah.
Or who it reminds me of. Have you seen Scrooged?
Oh, yes, I've seen Scrooged.
With Bill Murray?
Yeah.
And his version of Marley is like got the holes in him. He's decaying, and he's got a golf ball that falls out of him, and a bird that comes out of one part of him. And when he drinks the scotch, it comes out of all the holes. That's what it kind of reminds me of. That sort of quite slightly gorier but silly version.
I love that, and I love that idea of like the bloody Baron, nearly headless Nick, that sort of thing. And again, the other thing that came up from these ghost options, talking about like the flavour, the role play of it, is that certain senses are dulled, and there's all these things where like they drink more than a gallon a week or something, or eat more food. The one I really liked though was that they need to have, like, to taste things, to actually taste things, they have to make it really spicy or really rich or something like that. And I just thought, that I like that. I think like that idea, because obviously there's that thing, can ghosts eat and all that sort of thing, but I like the idea that they can eat, they physically are, and they can take stuff in, but for order for it to make an impact, they need to have like it needs to be hot sauce. It needs
Yes.
to be just a bit, because it's a bit like iZombie was a bit like that, when the leading lady, she dies and is a zombie and she solves crime. I've badly advertised it, but it's quite good. But the way she to taste stuff, she has to put hot sauce on it to taste.
Oh,
And
right. Yeah, because
I quite like
the
that.
taste buds are all dull. I think, should we move back then to how the sort of death system works and how people come back to life and how
Yes.
sort of... do you want to describe that, or...?
I'm going to leave that over to you, because
Okay.
it's very complicated.
It is very complicated. So basically, when you die in this setting, and this is something that I think can be converted into your 5e that you're playing or whatever in that sense, is that you end up on the ethereal plane. So that is something we all are aware of. And then when you end up on the ethereal plane so this is once you've lost all your death saves, basically, there is a thing called the ethereal tide, I think it was called, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, ethereal tide, which is a wind that sort of blows through the ethereal plane for all these dead souls, that if you sort of succumb to this, you sort of float along it towards the veil of souls, which is the sort of physical manifestation of the portal between the living world and the undead world. And so at the time when you die, you can either choose to... You can use a spell to just jump out of the ethereal plane, even as any ghost. You get this as an ability, or you can follow this route to get close to the Veil of Souls and then jump out earlier if you want to. And you've got to make saves and all that stuff. I think, and then this physical location that we talk about, the Veil of Souls, is something that is in both the living world and the dead world. It's something that you can either travel through the ethereal plane straight on, or one person could, in reality, go to this location by going to the city of Manifest, which we'll get to, but going through a portal, going underground, deep underground, and finding this literal veil. And you could even walk through it if you are alive, if you so wished, if you want to get past some of the people guarding it. And and when you're this ghost person as ethereal plane, you can choose to step out from the ethereal plane into the real world, and you are this. They talk very deeply on the difference between this is not a ghost like the ghost you see on
they make that like it's a huge section about it, saying, hey, they're not these kinds of ghosts. And I thought that was really interesting, because I guess making that distinction, because otherwise you're just like, I'll just go kill someone because they're like this, and they have these. I guess it's to make sure you don't get certain abilities, like whatever the frightening stare or whatever it is, to make sure that people aren't just like, everything's afraid of me now because I can dislocate my jaw and it's fine. But yeah, I guess, and that thing as well, like you're saying, this sort of this veil, this idea of like, if you step out so that you can still get to it. It's not like your one chance, and it's you might like, I need to finish something, I need to help my friends and my allies, or there's something else I need to do to say goodbye to my loved ones. And there's this thing going, when I die, I'll see you in Manifest, which I guess that's such a just that idea is that it's a common phrase, or saying it in lore, to the point even where people will have on their bodies saying what they would like, saying, I want this, I want my body to be taking this, I want to be in Manifest, I want to do these things. It's almost like nowadays we talk about stuff like organ donation, and like, hey, there's all these adverts on TV now going, hey, let's have the conversation. Do you know what your loved ones want?
It's exactly like it was exactly like that. And you can get these. So and I think and that whole point of like, so when you die is now a completely different thing, because it's like, do you want to be left alone to just float onto the Veil of Souls? Do you want to be resurrected straight away? Because that's quite an easy thing to do. Or do you want to be left to just be this intermediary phase of a ghost and have some time as that? Because some people, so when you become a ghost, there are benefits and you still gain from that. And so they were saying, you are incorporeal and you do take certain different types of damage. And so certain people, like rogues, might die on purpose using the painless death spell. So you can buy that for 10 gold pieces.
10 gold pieces for that,
10 gold pieces, and then be dead for a couple of days, and then do whatever sneaky you want to do, and then get raised from the dead for 500 gold pieces after you've done your job. So like, people are actually jumping in and out. They've made this into a marketing process. It's a commercial commodity of dying and being reborn, which is quite interesting.
It was that chapter, that first chapter was really interesting, talking about like how the different classes see stuff. So like the barbarians, like this is such an alien concept to them. So there's very rarely you'd have ghost barbarians happening, whereas you were saying like rogues more likely, bards was another one. I think there was an interview with the two writers talking about it, and they're like, yeah, we wanted to be shake things up and like include bards a bit more in these sort of things, which I thought was really interesting as a result. And stuff like paladins and clerics, they're less likely to, because obviously they have their gods who might want them to, your time is done now, and they might want to meet their gods, whereas some might be like, no, you need to finish something, So I it's a bit like when we did our Planescape one, that idea of like philosophy and stuff, like each of them having a different style in it. So you're like, hey, your players might like, oh, I really do want to play a ghost at some point. So, well, have a see what your class says about it, and maybe you want to change classes, or maybe you want to think about like how can you weave that in narratively. So I thought that was quite good.
And I mean, even then, if you are a cleric, so there was that whole point that, so the whole process of this transition towards the Veil of Souls, and one of the reasons why you might want to become stay as a ghost is to have your body brought with you, because there's the theory that your body being brought with you gives you benefits in this afterlife, which and the thing is, they're saying, as they say a lot in this book, we know the afterlife exists because it's clearly there. There's a door and you can get to it. So this whole point that the theory that this would happen is important. So in that regard, though, there's obviously people that help you get there, help you make this ghost walk, hence the title. And so you might be, as a cleric, someone who helps aid people on this journey to stop them being attacked, because there are necromancers in here who want to raise these ghosts easily erased into undead and converted into undead. So there's a lot of people protecting them. So maybe as a cleric, you might, as a ghost, take up this mantle of being a ghostly protector as well, I could imagine, or a paladin equally, of leading the ghost walk and leading people, helping someone make that transition. There's easily a campaign, a little adventure in there where you meet someone who's died and you need to go get their body and then bring it back, and all that sort of great stuff.
So there's this other thing about, you kind of mentioned it there, this idea that obviously ghosts are their own people and stuff, but they can't be confused with undead. So in the City of Manifest, there's a whole thing like, do not create undead, because that is evil and stuff. And obviously there are different, there's definitely like criminal underground guilds and like that do this sort of thing. And obviously we'll go into that, this idea of body snatching as well, very Victorian London, etc. But again, it's one of those things where, if people don't die, what are they going to use their bodies for? There's did we talk? We must. No, I've talked about it with someone recently. Stephanie Meyers, the author of the Twilight series. She wrote a book called The Host, which is a similar sort of idea that they're just people getting transformed. It's a bit like Animorphs, that idea of people taking over bodies that they don't need and all that sort of thing. And I just. Again, that's the thing, is that as kind of can be political in a way, because it's like, well, Granny's not using her body anymore, but we don't want any bugger coming around using Granny's body, like.
Yes, that's true, because ghosts have the ability to inhabit another body and animate it, and it's interesting. I like the interesting. It's very true. It's just sort of. It kind of brings up, as you said, a philosophical debate within your campaign. I was like, you're going to really talk about death in a new way, and how you would want that body to be preserved, what your feelings are about that sort of afterlife. It gives you these sort of questions that can be quite morally interesting, I think, which is something that I think is always interesting to a role-playing campaign.
And just to quickly go on to that, so there again, in somewhere in Manifest, I can't remember when or where, there's a tavern or something where people can go meet potential hosts, so ghosts could do it and organise sessions,
like dinner dating.
Like dinner dating, exactly that. And I love this idea that obviously it's like boring people that come as hosts but may dress up a bit to show like, oh yeah, I like having a good meal, and you can control me whilst I'm eating, and you can taste the food and stuff like that. Again, a very bizarre thing, but people kind of do that in the real world, where they'll pay to watch someone do something and get enjoyment out of it.
Yes,
so
it's very true.
It's I guess it's that sort of thing, and like again, it's that sort of thing where you might need to talk about it, saying, hey, there are some themes here about consent and control,
Yeah.
maybe with your players and stuff like that, make sure people are okay with it. But it's fascinating. I think it's fascinating. So again, maybe it's just, again, I know we talked about like spooky season and like, ooh, ghosts, but like, what if ghosts were their own people? They have to have their own rights and their own place and their own like section of society. And how does that interact with other people? And obviously there've been loads of TV shows and stuff like that. Like the big one I know I talked to you about when we talked about this idea of like Torchwood Miracle Day, where people stop dying, and it's like, well, they're in a constant state of like undead, but like, you know, they're still having the heart attack and they're still filling up the hospitals and stuff. You know, it's pretty
that's awful.
grim.
Yeah.
Pretty grim. So yeah.
Oh, well, that.
Anyway.
Yeah, that's lovely.
Segue that then.
Segue. How do I segue from that? Talking about consistent heart attacks.
Yes.
I think what I wanted to go on then, but something we skipped on was the why you might want to be a ghost. I thought there was something they gave, which I think is something that can translate quite easily, because this is, as I said, 3E and there's a 3.5E conversion for it as well. But they have these things called ghost powers and these sort of the paths of the ghost, which I quite enjoyed actually. And so they use ectoplasm. If you've ever watched Ghostbusters, you'll be very much aware of ectoplasm, and that's the sort of corporeal form they take on, these ghosts, and so that's sort of like made out of this ectoplasm. But the 6 paths basically represent ability or progression of power along a particular theme. So the ones that there are, I just quite like the names. And there's the path of the corruptor, which is the study of the relationship between a ghost body's ectoplasm and the bodies of other living things or ghosts. So as we were talking about, like these inhabiting of ghosts, and so you might allow ghosts to harm bodies or ghost bodies of others with a touch. This and it gives you symptoms. So whenever you take this path, you become physically adorned with an affectation that makes others aware of what path you're going down, which is quite interesting, because you can't then, you're very much aware, oh, that's a corruptor, get away, sort of thing. So this one is like the constant pale blue, black or grey aura around the hands of the ghost, and temporary alterations to objects contacted by the hands. For example, the corruptor ghost tends to leave condensation outlined handprints on objects she touches.
Ooh.
And you get feats then, so you get agony touch and this corrupting touch, and there's little ideas which I think could easily be construed into a 5e. Or there's the dominator, which is more about physical bodies, the haunt, which is to scare others from a distance, so you get haunting presence and frightful moan, horrific appearance, and improved control visage.
It's not enough to control, it is improved.
Yes, exactly. Poltergeist, which is, it says it all really. You can do more, move objects, and the symptoms of this is visible swirls of dust float around the ghost, and even minor shaking of larger unattended objects. So you just, when you walk around, things just tremble around you. Yeah. Oh,
it's like when you see those, like when you have clips on YouTube of CCTV footage of the pubs, and there's like a glass, and it goes, watch the glass, and then nobody's there, and it just goes whoop, off the table, and you're like, how did that happen? And you're like, no one knows.
No.
So if that's what Poltergeist does, it's like, wow, it's like, oh, it's time for a new drink for that guy. So.
Yeah, definitely. And there's so they were quite fun, and I think there's something that is easily translated as well, and nice little, there's lots of little bits of that sort of real bit of colour that it adds to the story, to the sort of ideas. I guess because sorry,
I was just going to say the idea that no two ghosts are the same. So whilst maybe it's another way of playing it that's not like it's a scary ghost. It's like there's different ways of doing it, and like we've played. I've played like stuff like Phasmophobia and stuff, and the different kinds of ghosts you have there obviously have different powers to scare and to frighten, and so you'd equally be as powerful but just using it different ways. So like a subclass essentially.
It is what it is. It's all that sort of what I kind of like about these older campaigns, and I don't know, some of them do this as well, but just adding additional affectations and stuff that gives your character individuality is I think interesting. I think people want more of that. So I think something like, well, particularly when you're turning it into a ghost, you need to add something to it. But having this just another moral quandary or a bit of individual idealism you can add to your character is always quite great, I think. So
definitely.
did you want to talk about the City of Manifest itself? We haven't really discussed that actual thing.
Yes, the big thing in the over the hill essentially. Yeah, so this is it's interesting, I guess. So how you've described it wonderfully, the sort of the origins of this idea of this veil appears in the real world as well. And I'm going to do a very, very potted history of this, and I'm sure you'll fill in the details and stuff. But I love this idea that, it was an elf, and which we haven't even spoken about, this idea that the elves have slightly different way of being a ghost and stuff like that. So we'll come to that, I'm sure. But this idea that there's two sort of a brother and sister, and there was one of them was like, I will not leave your side. And so when they died, instead of passing over completely, they went to go find their brother. And this idea of for elves is that it's almost like soul trees essentially, and they sort of bond together in sort of enclaves into the trees itself. And then going around this sort of place, they're finding this sort of this veil, and then this idea of, and I'm going to get this wrong, is it Death Warden dwarves?
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't even look at the notes.
And they
then.
were just there, weren't they? Just when she went looking for her brother, they were just standing guard already. They'd found it however many aeons ago.
So this idea that these dwarves have been here since who knows when, and they are the ones, they are sort of the main gatekeepers and the main people that help people on their pilgrimage, on the Ghostwalk down, those who get there. So that this idea that they're this almost like strong but silent guardians, ever watching, that sort of thing, and it will always be there. And so with the discovery of this veil, people started flocking in. So first it was almost like a shanty town with tents and stuff, and then it was destroyed through various wars, and then slowly but surely it's been built up and built up and built up until it has now become manifest. It's sort of like it's sort of walled sort of fortress where people are coming every day. It was talking about like, I'm going to get this wrong now, like over 30,000 people living there, or at least 1/3 of the people living there as ghosts. That's a sizable amount of the population. And then when you had sort of 10,000 people, non-residents, so people who are, like you were talking about this idea of bringing bodies into the place. So these people who are, on caravans, on these things, bringing bodies in and all doing trades and stuff, or only stopping there briefly. It's a bustling cosmopolitan city, very diverse in that sort of sense, and with a lot of population, extra population in it.
And a transient population, as they say, because I think they say there's 30,000 people generally in the city, and then 10,000 just turning up, because the name manifests is that even if you just let this wind take you, you then eventually will manifest at the City of Manifest to then take your final physical journey to this Vale of Souls. So that's the sort of, so that's why there's always just, you might be just walking around and suddenly like, oh, hello.
Oh, I'm
hello.
here.
Hello, Bill, how you doing? Oh, right, I haven't seen you in years. Sort of thing.
Yeah. And in the City of Manifest itself, there are these sort of 5 wards, and each of them have a warden, and they each have their own distinct character as well. So we've got like the main ward, which is the Portal Ward, which has this huge, like, the most distinctive thing about it is the fact that there's just a huge grand portal.
I'm going to have to show that art right now. It's
show the art.
Yeah, so beautiful.
It is. It's incredible. This beautiful sort of tower imposed and stuff, and you can tell that this is where you start your pilgrimage and stuff. It's just sort of, I think, looking at the map itself, you can. It would be the highest thing, I think, for miles around. So you would probably see it as you were coming into Manifest, which I quite like. You also have. You've got the forest view, which I guess is sort of more naturalistic, a bit more residency with the sort of the elves and stuff. You have great names, sort of like Phantom Hill, which is the one you were pointing out before, which I love. And the other one I really loved was the Tomes Yard. This idea of, again, it's sort of like, it's all sort of crypt-like, and the idea that ghosts, or those people who live there, they can afford like a room and stuff, but it might just be as big as a drawer or something like that.
But they don't want for what humans need, living beings need. So they can just, some of them just rent a cupboard, don't they, or even just
cupboard, but then they might like, but I like having some possessions, I guess. Like I'm just like, God, if they, it feels very London, to be honest. Like,
right now,
I'm in a box.
The premonition of London 10 years later. Yeah, exactly, 100%. Yeah, it's very true.
Yeah.
There's some lovely things in that city. You mentioned some of the tavern names as well being quite good.
Yes. So the Angel Wings,
that was it,
which was like the most beautiful, popular one. I was like, of course, because it's got a name like that. But there is Rest, which is the other name of a tavern.
Yes.
Which I like that. Very simple, straightforward. Like they've got some other ones, I think, which was like the something Swan. Oh, the Magic Swan Tavern, the Leafy Branch, which again I assume those are sort of like they're not Weatherspoon pubs, but they're
they are
franchise pubs.
Yeah, they're sort of. Nameapubgenerator.com a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit, but
yeah.
So I quite like those, and I think just looking at the layout and stuff, and each ward has its own personality, which I quite like, and like you do have obviously the market ward, which is where all the story behind the market ward is quite great, I find. So I'll again a potted history, but essentially I think it was the Tome Yards. There was a big fire, and then they were rebuilding it, and there's just lots of shop, and then eventually it was like, we'd declare our own independence from all these other yards.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, okay. And so I quite like that as a result. Like again, a little personality going, yes, we are merchants. This is where we live now.
Yeah.
Like, oh, okay.
Yeah, no, and that's the thing. It's like it comes with this initial big idea of the ghosts and stuff like that, but they have created, and as we said, we can't talk about all of it, but they've created a whole world. There's a whole world here to involve yourself with, but as we said, you don't have to. The thing that is critical to it here, but they've still given it. There's a lot of flavour and a lot of individuality to the it itself, and well, by its nature as well, as you said, like the Tome Yards and the living conditions of the dead versus the living, and the fact that they're living together. There's a great, and in the art, there's that sort of the artwork does show, just ghosts buying something from a shop from a human. It's like there's sort of little bits of that. What the elves then? You said they were different, so they have this spirit wood which sort of surrounds it. So how does that work?
So like from what I understand, like it's again the elves sort of go there and get attracted to. Again, I might have skipped this one a little bit. I'll be honest.
Sorry, I didn't mean to.
No, because I think it's interesting because it is that sort of thing where we all don't perceive death or the end in quotation marks the same way. So it's just and it makes sense with elves, I guess, because obviously they live a lot longer and they have a different culture. Or it seems different in a way. So I would have liked to seen actually, and maybe again I might have skipped this as well, because obviously we've got the Death Warden dwarves. And they have their own way to do it, and obviously it's a certain races in manifest itself. It'd been really cool to see if there was different nuances with that. So if the dwarves had something else, for example, it wasn't necessarily manifest as well. It's like we have another town elsewhere, and it's just just like specialize it a little bit more. And the same with gnomes and halflings as well.
I think that could be quite interesting. I think there's something like nice about the sort of water deepness of having one main one, but you're actually quite, because the elves get a very particular thing, and they also mention. And I guess it's a bit of that old school D&D that half orcs are seen as bad, and the gnolls that are going there, they have to use the high alter self to sort of get themselves through the city of manifest to sort of help their clan leaders, and it's kind of there's all that sort of old school D&D thing. But I think in a new setting, you could really. I think you could build on this city and really give, if it was not different cities, different wards that are about, different, or at least temples.
Different quarters. Something. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so like obviously we have like the Spanish quarter or the French quarter or something like that. Yeah, that'd be quite cool to have something like that. And actually, it's a good thing you mentioned like the half orcs and sort of the outside influences. So obviously the history of Manifest is quite tarnished, as you said, with sort of like wars and stuff like that. But the idea that some people just don't like it, this idea that this is a city state in effect. Obviously we've said like it can be there is countries that they're given as examples that you can put it in the book, but the idea that there are people that are keep trying to come in and go, no, this is not great, and try and just because of the way they've been taught what death is and stuff like that. So it's almost like the abomination of this place goes against everything, and they're going to destroy it if they can. So
there has been a lot. Yes, as you said, there's some good history there, and there's some good like adventure hooks, or like if you want to give yourself a setting and you want to have like you're looking for an overarching sort of campaign idea. There's stuff from the history which I thought was actually quite good. So there was I think one that sort of jumped out to me was the Lich War. There's the one that I thought was like if you wanted to take like you're looking for. You've got this city of manifest, but you also want to get something that's like a good antagonist to sort of play off. There's, they basically said these fisher folk march. This basically lord of the upturned grave, who was a necromancer, basically, and under the guise of this demon prince Orcus, who basically grew armies of cultists supported by demons and undead creatures, and then systematically rose up people as undead servants to go and take over the city of Manifest. That was the sort of the war that it brought. He also took over the whole of the world, but you could just bring it to Manifest, this sort of undead ultimate sort of evil that's going to do the sort of the most vilest thing that can happen to these poor souls. And so that's something that you can have as a great antagonist. And then they've even given you this sort of this end of the war came when the Carden court mustered a horde of ghost warriors to join the ranks of the living and fight against the undead. At the same time, there's a group of, let's say the mage circle, without going too deep into it, performed a ritual known as the Rite of the Seven Crowns. They gave each of the defending generals a crown that imbued him with incredible physical might. And you could, and they were destroyed by that. But you could sort of see or maybe you could see we have to go get the crowns again because this is happening again or something, and we need to find these lost crowns. And there's already just in 4 paragraphs you've got yourself your beginning of your campaign if you want one.
Absolutely. Well, in one of the interviews I was reading, they had one of the alternate covers they were going to have that got scrapped. Was the idea they had a ghost adventurer trying to fight a lich who had a zombie guarding the lich who was the adventurer's body. Yeah. And I was like, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That idea that the body's been using against you because they're undead and all that sort of thing. So yeah, I like, and obviously a lich or a necromancer in some way of doing that. So yeah, anything like that, anything that deals with this magic, because this is the thing. Obviously, it is death. I guess here is supposed to feel like a natural end or a thing like that. So anything that goes against that instantly becomes interesting as a power dynamic. So yes, someone like you said, liches are great for that sort of thing because they are just completely evil because they're just gaining all this stuff and just getting crueler and crueler and bitterer and bitterer. Yeah. That's not even a word.
Bitterer is a word. Yeah,
bitterer. But yeah, so I think that's an excellent sort of hook. I guess for me would be, if I was doing this more of a political stuff, maybe it's just having the idea that maybe an embassy has come. So we sort of, again, I keep alluding to these other countries. There is, again, another chapter on it, which we won't go into too much detail, but the idea that here are some examples of countries where you could put Manifest in. Yeah. And having that idea of the Council of Sorcerers, who's it's almost like an autocrat sort of society or anything like that. And it's we don't agree with, and there's nothing they can do per se. So is that almost like what's it called in Northern Lights? It's the church essentially. Yeah. That idea is this goes against everything we have said, and this is a threat to our authority. So that would, again, that idea that's happening in the background, and then sending an embassy and something happens to the embassy and all that sort of thing.
Oh yeah, I love that. I want to play that one. That sounds really good. Yeah, okay. I'm up for that good political sort of drama.
I think, because this is the thing, I think it's again one of those things where we've talked about this several times before, and the way we spoke about a couple of weeks ago, this idea of the future of D&D, it's going towards more storytelling, it's going towards more streaming games for that story rather than combat. Yeah. Here, it's interesting because obviously combat is the main thing in the sense of you're now a ghost because you've died, presumably through combat or through saving throw or through something like that. And now, how do you deal with that because it's not like this.
Brings you right into a very strong role-playing situation, doesn't it?
Yeah, because obviously again you've got these classes, these ghost classes as well, but here's the thing, as I realized reading it, is that if you gain more classes in as a ghost than you do as in your player thing, this idea of the calling, this sort of pull thing that you need to go and over the other side is stronger and stronger until you give into it eventually, and that could take weeks, months, years. And again, that to me is that's a storytelling thing. Yeah, the more because you were getting further and further away from your old life, and you are now going to another place. And you're not that person anymore. There's no way you can go back. So yeah, I just thought that was for me. I'm that's a great storytelling thing, not necessarily a great combat thing.
No, exactly. And I think even if the ghost classes don't, you could translate them. I think it's very possible if you know your 3.5 or 3E and you know your 5E well enough, you could do it. But if you don't, I think you could still use as you're leveling up as a dead person, just mark them down as I've taken this many levels whilst dead to how many levels whilst alive. And when that balance becomes too much dead, even if it's still in your bard class or your sorcerer class, you could use it. You could still make it work that way. I'm sure there's so many talented DMs out there. You're all Matt Mercers to me, so I'm sure you'll come up with an idea to yourself. But that calling idea is good because it then does. That's the next step, isn't it? You've taken that journey, becoming a ghost, and now we've got to make you. Maybe one of your party hits that marker, and you decide to take them on the Ghostwalk, and you travel into the Undercity. So you go through the portal down into this Underdark area and follow all that path, of which there's not some great stuff down there to fight either.
I was going to say, the Undercity is a very interesting thing as well. Again, this idea that Manifest is not the first time, this is not the original Manifest, it's been burnt to the ground and destroyed and stuff.
Yes.
And all they've done is just built on top of it. Again, the idea that the death of this city is still underneath, and you talked about this idea of like the basement is actually the ground floor of a previous house, and this going through this, and it feels very much like I know one of the big influences was Neil Gaiman. This idea of London below and things, I'm thinking like Labyrinth, that sort of thing. It's just dark and
the
dank.
city I live in, for example, Bath,
of course,
is
Bath.
Built that way. I mean, you go 3 stories down. The ground floor of a lot of the cities is the basement floor is the old ground floor, so it's all built up 1 story up. So it's all vaults and stuff. So there is the main centre of Bath. You can walk down the streets between, and there's vaults underneath the roads, and they're all connected in the main cities. Like my house that I live in has got vaults. It's all vaults underneath the roads, so that everything, the road is all 1 story up, and then the Romans are another 2 or 3 stories down. So the Roman baths, if you come to Bath, go to Bath in the UK, you go to the Roman baths and you go down some elevators, and then there's the Roman city is down there. That's where, so the baths are built on top of, there's 3 layers, and I can give you a fancy word for this. Do you want a fancy word?
Yes, fancy word, let's go. Palimpsest.
Yeah, palimpsest. Is like layering up. There's another one in Rome. Rome's very much similar. It's a very thing, but Rome, there's a church, which is, there is an ancient, I'm gonna have to remember there's a very Doric style, a very simple temple that they built a Roman temple on top of, which they then built a Renaissance church on top of, and you can go down and see all the layers. It's really cool. I will find a link for it now, and I'll put it on here so you can have a look at some pictures. But there's a really beautiful section of it they've done. Yeah,
that baffles me. This idea that there's like so many layers below and stuff like that. In my head, I'm like, if the commute is too bad on layer 1, go down to layer 2 and just like sneak your way across.
But it's a thing that happens in reality. So more in the European world than it does in the Americas. So that's the thing.
I love that. So I guess in terms of the sort of Ghostwalk in general, what's the big thing that you've really enjoyed about it? Like going into I know we've literally covered like teeny tiny bits of it and such. And
it's so difficult. I think something that's a little bit off topic from the actual ghost, but something that I really did enjoy from it, and I mentioned to you, was the deities actually that they've got in there.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily that you have to use these deities at all. And again, I'm not saying that, but they are great and they're interesting in their own right. But what I did love about them, and I'm want to find them. I was looking through the DM's Guild, the DM's Guide itself for what they say. But in the DM's Guide, it just tells you how to make a pantheon. It doesn't give you a pantheon, and it made me think there hasn't really been a Forgotten Realms setting book campaign guide for 5e. There's the Sword Coast Adventurers Guide, and there's not actually been which I think they possibly could. It would be actually, when we're talking about the future of D&D, maybe one of those would be nice. So
a lot of the stuff we either get through it's not Vola, it may be Volas and more kind of that. Here is a history of like halflings and gnomes. Here's some of their gods, etc. But I think maybe there is somewhere, but I agree. Like sometimes The only actually that's what I was saying off podcast. The only one I know that would do that in great detail is obviously Mythic Odyssey or Theros, because the gods are such an important part of that whole campaign world. And it's interesting here because I feel that maybe, and I say this as someone who hasn't played characters that a lot have relied on deities for their powers, so like paladins or clerics or that sort of thing. It feels like there isn't a mechanic benefit to act in your god's favor. Only a role playing thing, because you can easily go, oh, well, I'm now a fallen paladin, or I've lost my powers or something like that. Yeah. But that's a story thing rather than, hey, if you don't act in your way for the god, you get a -2 penalty or something like that. So it would be cool to get more about it. Like, and I know like Orcus gets mentioned a lot. Yeah, because he's the big bad dude one. Of the undead. Yeah. He's everywhere, and it's this again. He's obviously he's a demon, I think, in the normal ones. Yeah. So yes, I was like, oh, I know that one.
Yeah, there is that. There is translations to them.
I guess again, just looking at the interview that they were like, well, we don't want to copy Ravenloft. It needs to be different. So they said Ghostwalk is more sort of cemetery creepy. Yeah. So that it's full of dead people, yet they're accepted by everyone. Yeah. And I was like, that makes so much sense it's just a thing. And it's some people find it creepy, some people don't. So I guess it's that. Yeah, it's the subtlety of it. So
I quite like it. I think it's quite. As you said, it's like a more. It's not scary. It's sort of. It's not scary, really. I mean, obviously you can make it scary, but it's it's sort of. It seems quite nice in some ways. I quite like the idea of it's sort of like these relationships that you can have, and it's more like it's more that sort of what is it said, like when death becomes more like attainable and more obvious, you can have more of a relationship with it, and so there's something about that which is quite interesting, and I think it makes it more it means you're kind of having to confront it, which is quite cool.
And so again, going back from that, the other bit I quite liked in Manifest itself was this Hall of Farewell, where if you had to go find a specific ghost, go there, because there's a whole registry of them. Or if you're looking for a body, or you're looking for some people to hire, there's where Ghost Adventurers would be. So it's like a port of call, so to speak. And again, just a great name as well, Hall of Farewell.
I love that. So, that was really good. So, there was one thing that's reminded me of that I didn't say, but you were saying about that whole point of having that Hall of Farewell and then people wanting their bodies to come with them to meet them there. There was a great little note there, which was they're saying, like, so to try and make sure that people do turn up to see you when you're dead, because people then worry that they're going to die, they're going to end up in Manifest, but no one's going to turn up with the body, so they're not going to get that benefit. So they might involve some interesting ploys for their family members to make sure they go there. So one of them was it says, one such incident occurred about 17 years ago. A wealthy woman hid away a key that would open an otherwise impenetrable treasure hoard. On her deathbed, she told her family and friends that the first one to find her it Manifest would learn the secret hiding place of the key. The cross-country race that ensued after her death is a thing of great stories even today. And you think, that's a great little campaign, this little adventure.
I was like, Monte Carlo or bust, you know.
Yes.
Like how do you get to Manifest?
Manifest or
how do you find
bust,
a Manifest or bust? There you go. That's the campaign you're running. Yeah. Absolutely, because that could be quite an interesting one as well, because that's a lot of separate people, and you could have like you know what, that would be a good long running one. So like a long running campaign where if you think about like 1 week you do it with 2 people and they have like an obstacle and they get a certain amount of the way, and then next week it's another group who don't know what the other people have done and are completely different, and that idea that they slowly make their way and people can have bets on how they get there, and rat race, and if someone else is doing the same path as them, the previous team have done something, and when you come in, the scenes change. So like they've taken the magic item that was in the pool, or they've not found it.
Okay, I'm seeing a Dragon's Jaw instead of one shots there. That sounds very much like what we do. But and even, or if it's just one party following, like has been hired by one of the family members to aid them on this quest, and you got to do some sabotage for the other ones to keep them back or send them on the wrong hunt and get them lost and stuff, and be just kind of silly about it. I think it'd be quite good.
yeah, there's so much you can do with that. That sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So is there anything, Hamilton, like sort of as we sort of go into the final few minutes of this, is there anything that you like, what's your big takeaway from Ghostwalk? What is it that you want people to go like, oh, this is really interesting and put into their campaigns?
I think what I take away from it is it just adds a whole new level of play to the whole game, and then just a whole new aspect of thinking about death, which can be kind of can be just sort of the thing that sits at the back of the table that everyone's sort of worried about as well. It kind of can take that away and allow that to become something enjoyable, but more enjoyable. It can make it something that if it happens, here's something else that's going to occur, rather than this tragic ending for your character. If you don't want that sort of play, but you want to have the chance for it to cause issues for your campaign, so you want to mean that if someone does die at the final battle of your adventure at the dragon and they all get a TPK, instead of it being the end of your campaign, it can then now be, okay, well, you haven't done your task, but you've now all travelled on this ethereal plane on towards the city of Manifest. You got to get back to your bodies, and that makes it allows the campaign to continue, and also have just another element to it, which is sort of fun, as well as on top of all the other things. But that's the one thing I take from it is that element.
Yeah, because they said that was one of the reasons they were sort of inspired to do it, was the idea that the most hated thing people hate in D&D is when they die, because it's the most boring bit, like in the sense like, well, that's it, that's the end of the story ends here. And so changing that is different. Yeah, no, I like that. I guess is there anything you'd want to change about this book at all? Anything structure-wise, perhaps?
Perhaps. I would bloody change the structure, that is for sure. If you buy this book, and if you do, we'll give you a link you can go use our affiliate link for the DMs Guild by going to dragonsduel.com. dragonsduel.co.uk/DMs Guild, and if you do that, we get some little benefits which helps us buy more books to talk about. But yeah, if you do buy it, skip to chapter 3, then go back to the other bits, because it gives you very small potted bits of information in the first 2 chapters of like player classes, a bit of what it means about ghosts and stuff like that. But if you want to get really into the meat of what the campaign guide is, I'd say read a bit at the beginning, and then when you start finding, well, this isn't important, just skip to chapter 3 where it starts talking about the city of Manifest itself, and then come back to those other bits, because otherwise you're like, items? I'm getting all the items now? I don't even know what these are to do with, of which there are lovely ones, but it's
some
funny,
great ones.
Funny. It's not... New D&D definitely got that better, that's for sure.
Absolutely, yeah. The idea that you've got player options, you're like, okay, and then it's like items and all this stuff, and you're just like, oh no, I want to know more about the ghosts. Like, what does the world mean? So yeah, I completely agree with you there. Just a little bit change up on, like, maybe split up the magic items, put them at the end, like normal books are. But anyway, yeah, I completely agree with that. And yeah, and the artwork's really interesting and different as well. And yeah, it was just nice. I think the only thing I'd like to add, really, which I feel is quite a shame, but you did say that there is obviously that you can convert it now, is that this was released maybe a couple of months before as 3rd edition. Yeah. And then they released 3.5 straight after it, and it was like, oh, whoops.
There is a massive document that you get with the download on DMs Guild, which is the conversion. I don't know if I sent that through to you, but no. Oh, well, I didn't bother you with it. But yes, there is a whole, literally 6 pages, like, take this bit out and change it for this, and take this bit, and you're like, oh my gosh, who the heck's going to do that? I don't know.
No one's going to do that. So yeah, just to forewarn people is like, a little bit of tweaking if you were going to, directly port it into stuff. But again, the thing I take away from it is that having a city based around an idea or a philosophy, you can put it in any campaign you have, but you need to think about how do other people outside of that city react to it. So, like, again, go back to those examples of the countries that it gives, but like if you put it in your own setting, it's like, well, what if it's in between 2 nations? What if it's a independent city-state? What if it's like, did it break away from another kingdom? Like,
people are going to want to control it, aren't they? That's the thing as well. Like, you get to control the gateway to death, which is everyone's going to go through. There's going to be.
Oh yeah, there's war. Well, there'll be loads of wars over it. Absolutely. So I think just bearing that in mind, you don't even have to play it through. As I think it's just something to put in the background. I'm a big fan of having that conflict in the background, and obviously agreeing with your players to say, is this interesting and okay? Because that's where you set the scene, especially with something like this, where again, death is not the end. and combat might be important, but that idea, like, to hear all these ideas and like how, you know, having those, what sounds like to me a more political campaign or more maybe even religious campaign, if you're taking someone through the Ghostwalk and finding out more than and protecting them and then making sure they reach their end, and then obviously you would be losing that person still. You're helping them get somewhere, but you're ultimately not going to see them again. So I think, again, some really interesting ideas and stories there, but again, just bear in mind, like, you can't just be like one and done.
Yes.
It's one of those things where, like, this is definitely outside the norm. So
100%. No, it's a really great overall, really good. And as with all these books, you find there's always great stuff in all of them, isn't there? That's the thing. There's always a good idea. So,
yeah.
Fantastic.
Well, Hamilton, thank you so much for introducing me to Ghostwalk. Really, really interesting. I've got to love 200 pages on a Monday. That's my favourite.
I was very impressed how quickly you read that. That was very impressive.
Yeah. Any other information I needed for Monday is no longer here. I'm sure I'll re-get it back. But Hamilton, what are you up to, my friend? How is Dragon's Duel?
Well, there might be more information by now, but we're recording this a little bit in advance. So all I can say is that our season 2 is done on the Twitch channel. Ooh. But as I said before, we are bringing it to the podcast finally because we've been a bit lax on that. So you should hopefully by now be having it coming out on a Monday, part 1, and part 2 on a Thursday. So you'll get your body stuff on a Monday and your mind stuff on a Thursday. And then once we get to about episode 3, we get some special things on Sundays where we've done some backstory episodes for those characters we make in the game show. And then some of the season 1 shots which feature yours truly, Fiona, in one of them as Helga Smashdagger, because we never actually put those on the podcast. So we're gonna lead those in so that they finish at the same time as the game shows for season 2, that then sneak directly into the season 2 one shots, which actually follow on story wise. So there you go.
Lots of stuff happening on Dragon's Duel. Yeah. Amazing work. I'm sorry. I was gonna say I forgot about me. And then you helped me. I was like, oh yeah, me. Hi everyone, my name is Fiona. I run the What Am I Rolling podcast, which is a twice monthly RPG one-shot podcast. As always, it's going very well. Unlike Hamilton, who always knows what's happening in advance, I have absolutely no idea what's out on that podcast currently. Whatever it is probably really good, and you should listen to it though.
Yes.
Other stuff. I'm probably doing some improv somewhere. I'm just follow us on Twitter follow us on Twitter at WAIR_podcast, and I'm sure we'll be putting stuff up there, obviously doing stuff with Dragon's Duel, and life's going on. Obviously we are doing DM's Book Club now on Dragon Duel Twitch every Thursday at 9 p.m. BST/GMT, whenever that changes. Oh, it will change. It's changed today because we're out on Halloween.
No, it's the week. We're just a couple of days before Halloween, so it'll be next week. It changes. Next week it changes. So once Halloween's happened,
I got way too excited.
It'll be GMT, and then there'll be 2 weeks where it's different in America, and then it'll be back to normal again. And Fiona has died. Fiona died because of time. That is another fatality down to daylight saving there and then. Is that Iron Brew you're drinking?
No, it's cheap Tesco's ginger beer.
Oh,
so.
Okay. I was going to give you bonus points for Iron Brew.
I wish. Anyway, so ignore that. But we are on the Twitch channel. We're going to do obviously more topics and stuff. Obviously, so far we've done Wild Beyond the Witchlight. We've done some more Feywild stuff. We've done
D&D, Future of D&D. We've done the Critical Role campaigns, guides, double bill.
Man, that was so exciting. I can't believe you said all these controversial opinions.
Hint. Our organisational skills might not be the same as your listening ways.
Excuse me, I'm still coughing. Okay. But yes, so that's all happening. So follow that on Dragon Duel Twitch, and then obviously the VOD will be out a week or so later, and then of course it will be on the podcast form as well. And finally, we also have an offer code for Third Space Gaming, your friendly local game store in Burnley. If you want to type in the offer code DMBC into checkout, you get 10% off your first order, and that could be on anything. It could be your RPG books, it could be new dice, even terrain. So go check those out. That's DMBC at checkout for Third Space Gaming. And that's it.
Oh.
I can't think. I think is that all? Is that everything?
Well, we
I can't
gave our
remember.
DM skill thing out, didn't we? We did that already.
We did. Yes,
we did.
that's very
We remember
exciting.
that one.
Well, I guess with that all out the way, I'm sure this is where you now put up the screen saying what we're doing next week, which I
Yes.
don't know anything about.
I don't know either.
So it's like it's gone up. Look at
we'll
that.
put it
Whoa.
up now. It will be actually after we finish. When we say bye, it then comes up and we'll tell you what is going to be live next week on Twitch channel.
Exciting stuff. Well, until then, my friends, thank you so much for listening and love you. Bye.